Welcome to the Everyday Citizens Tactical Podcast, Episode 31, A Look at 2024. My name is Jeremy, and as always, I will be your host. I know I'm a bit behind getting into the game this year, but I kind of want to talk about what I expect from 2024, some of the big events to come, and talk briefly about how you can prepare for this wild year to come. So sit back, relax, and let's enjoy a short episode.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Straight the numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Straight the numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone, and a happy belated new year in 2024. Obviously, I've been a little bit behind the ball. I have not gotten a lot of content out yet so far in 2024. I talked about it briefly back in December. Got a lot going on in life right now. And I've always said it in the past, ECT is not a very big team. You know, it is a small business, and I am the majority of that business when it comes to creating content, the administrative side. Really, I get help on the training side when we do classes and whatnot. So life events have become very busy for myself. For those of you that follow me on social media, you know that I am back in paramedic school now. They finally lifted the vaccine requirement for that back in the fall, which I got kicked out of paramedic class for the first time in 2021. So I'm back in paramedic class, and anybody that has gone to paramedic class knows that it is one hell of a year of school. Your schedule is absolutely crazy between class time, between clinical time, between field time, between studying, and then you're already working. Most of us are already working a full-time job on top of it. If you're an older guy, if you're a guy that's right out of high school, maybe not. But myself, I'm already working full-time at the firehouse, trying to run the farm here, trying to run ECT, trying to run my local group of guys, trying to do paramedic school. I'm getting married this year, trying to maintain a social presence with my friends and my fiance and my family. It adds up a lot. And ECT has kind of taken a bit of a backseat. I'm still fulfilling orders, and I'm still making the occasional Instagram posts. But as far as like really dedicated YouTube creation time, it's kind of behind at the moment. Which, that happens at times, and that's okay. But I'm still going to try to push out an episode or two of the podcast a month and hopefully a YouTube video. I do have some cool things lined up, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more later in the podcast. But just know that, we are not gone here at ECT just because we're a little bit slower recently. I'm just trying to stay caught up on everything that is life. But that is not the main topic of conversation today. Today, I want to talk about kind of what to expect from 2024. This is being recorded the night of January 30th. So, just a day or two before the beginning of February. So we're a month into 2024 already, and a ton has already happened. And it has a huge effect on the events that are going to play out later this year as a whole, one of the major ones being the presidential election. There's a meme going around right now that shows the correlations between 2020 and 2024. In 2020, it was a leap year. It was a Trump versus Biden presidential election, and the Chiefs and 49ers went to the Super Bowl, and now it's 2024, leap year. Likely going to be Biden versus Trump, if there even is an election at this point, and it is, once again, the Chiefs versus the 49ers. Once again, the only thing we're missing is, a little bit of COVID overseas, only to show up here a month after the Super Bowl. Let's hope that whole fiasco does not happen again. But obviously, kind of going on right now, the hot stuff. Internationally, we have the whole crisis in the Red Sea with Yemen and Iran, kind of as the broader effects of the war in Gaza right now. Back in October, obviously Hamas, committed atrocious acts and attacked Israel. And I don't say it in that way because I'm a pro or anti-Israel person. I just say that at plain face value, what Hamas did was atrocious. raping and killing women, kidnapping children, just killing old people in their houses and in their beds. It's pure evil. And just depending on how you look at the situation around the world, or what your political stance is, or your religious affiliation, your national affiliation, people see this whole conflict differently. Obviously, we have the issues with Yemen right now in the Red Sea. Yemen has basically said all pro-Israel and Western-backed companies do not have safe transit through the Red Sea right now. And we've seen a lot of attacks on commercial shipping. We've seen a lot of attacks on kind of coalition forces, naval forces. And I'm not entirely sure whether I believe the Department of Defense for the U.S. and then the same for the defense departments for our, NATO allies when they say that a military naval vessel has not been struck yet. I don't know if I fully believe that. I think it may be part of a PR war. I don't think any significant damage has been done against naval forces, but to say that nothing's happened at all, I think is a bit of a stretch. But we are now, only a few days out from when 3 American service members, and I believe the number is over 40 now, were injured somewhere near the border of Jordan and Syria. Obviously, a huge escalation of, the conflict as a whole, and the kind of subliminal war between the U.S. and the U.K. and all of these Iranian proxies in the Middle East. We expect some sort of response to that fairly shortly. So I'm going to assume by the time this comes out on Friday, which should be February 2nd, something probably happened. And rightfully it should. We can argue about whether the U.S. should be as involved as it is in the Middle East and all of its bases, and whether they're legal bases and occupations and whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is 3 service members were killed. And I have enough pride in my country, at least as a whole as it is right now, that that bothers me, and I think someone needs to get their ass whooped for that. I'm not really about the let's just conduct a retaliatory airstrike or two. We need to smoke some fools, because if we're going to be over there, might as well be the biggest dog in the yard. And then in other events, we have seen an escalation by North Korea and more actions by China out in the Pacific. North Korea has been slowly creeping up its wartime rhetoric and kind of making some preparations and increasing tests. It makes me wonder if an attack from North Korea on South Korea will co-align similar in a similar time frame of China moving on Taiwan. If we remember back to 2019, 2020, we always said that our defense officials always said, by sometime between 2028 and 2030, we'll be at war with China. China will try to take Taiwan. And then by sometime in 2022, they told us, by 2025, we're probably going to be at war with China. Well, now it's 2024. The clock is ticking down. And we're kind of running out of time on that, which has always been a weird mental game to play as it is. We have farmer strikes all over Europe, mainly in Germany and France right now. France is leading the charge on that. I think as a whole, around the world, there's just a lot of political strife. We are at the point in history where ideologies are going to clash. Whether you're a right-wing population that's fed up against a left-wing government, or you're a radical left-wing population that's fed up against the right, or doesn't think that the capitalist ways are, doing enough for the people, and you're looking at a color revolution, whatever it might be. The world has so much built-up tension right now, which brings us to the U.S. Anybody that says the U.S. is not on a collision course for some sort of internal political and potential conflict, I think is not paying a good enough attention. What's hot on the topics right now is the whole Texas border situation. Now, I do not think we're on the brink of civil war over the Texas border situation. There is a significant, actually, what I would say is really a big surprise on my part. I am surprised that Governor Abbott took the stance that he did. I would not have expected that this early, in the political game. but I think it was necessary. And if you look at the finer details of this whole border situation, even the Border Patrol Union and a lot of Border Patrol agents, they stand with Texas. They agree that the border situation is out of control and more needs to be done. But the problem with this whole situation is you have Texas taking a stand and saying, we're going to do what we think is right regardless of what the feds say. And you have over 24 states backing Texas, either just through support through words, or they're sending actual supplies and fellow National Guardsmen to the border there to help Texas. And on the other side, you have the federal government, which as a whole is kind of ideologically aligned with the left and more woke culture. Even our own law enforcement entities, all these big three-letter agencies, have kind of been weaponized against a certain side of the political spectrum. So you have them, and then of course all of the other Democratic politicians, maybe some governors that are like, this is unacceptable, Texas needs to fall in line and listen to orders. So we have tension building there, but I think the Biden administration has a lot on their plate right now. They're expected to give a response for the service members killed. The left is not happy with Biden on his stance with Israel right now. The right is not happy with Biden over Ukraine aid and a lack of border security. So the federal government is kind of in a lose-lose-lose-lose situation currently. And I don't see getting out of that anytime soon, unfortunately. I just don't think it's in their nature to please the people. They're going to do whatever they need to do to accomplish the plan that they have set forth into motion however long ago it was. I'm going to take a drink of my hot chocolate now. A lot of people drink beer or whiskey when they film podcasts. I normally don't. I normally sit here with a glass of water. But in the wintertime, I enjoy warm beverages, and my hot chocolate is just my go-to. It is a guilty pleasure of mine. Regardless, back to it. So yeah, 2024 is shaping up to be weird. And then, of course, we have the election coming later this year. And once again, whether you're pro-Donald Trump or anti-Donald Trump, or you really just don't care, I don't think that anybody wins in this election. If Trump wins, the left will deny it. They'll say it's fraudulent. Antifa and BLM will try to burn everything down again, and I think we'll see some serious issues. And if Joe Biden wins again, regardless of just how horribly he's deteriorated in his old condition, the right will say it was planned against Trump, fraudulent election. I think you'll see more Republican heavy states get emboldened, like this whole Texas situation. I think things get worse on a more wide scale political spectrum, and all around, I don't think anybody wins in any of this in the end. Do we get into a conflict with ourselves a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now? What is the time frame? It's too hard to tell. I am a realist in knowing that something in the future, in the near future, my adult life, or young adult life, I should say. And I'm not talking like when I'm 30 years from now and 60. I'm talking, now and 5 or 6 years to come. I think we see just a serious change, and we see some serious resets in our lifetime, whether that be caused by international conflicts, national conflicts, the kind of reset of our financial system, the collapse of our financial system, whatever it is. I am a realist. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that if we just believe hard enough that nothing's going to happen, that we can all move past this. I just don't find that to be a reality, and I think it's silly. Now, what can you do with that, with all that doomer mindset? What can you do to prepare for all of this? How do you ensure your family's security, their safety, their stability, so on and so forth? And the first bit of that is your own personal preparedness. I've talked about it a ton. There's a lot of content on YouTube about it. But you need to have your own personal preparedness squared away. before you are thinking about community groups and, big political movements and whatever it is, your own preparedness needs to be, well established. You are not going to run off and do anything, as much as you may morally align with the cause, if your own family is scraping and struggling and all that kind of stuff. So, where does that start? We look at basic food preps. We look at a bit of, self-reliability, self-sustainability. Do you have some level of a garden? If you don't garden full time, do you at least have the knowledge and the tools to garden? What does your emergency and backup power sources look like? Do you have a generator? If you have a generator, how much fuel do you really have? If you are looking long term, a standard gas generator is not a long term solution. Do you have solar? Do you have things? Are you comfortable, and have you thought about what life looks like for you if you don't have power? And I think it's a good time to kind of talk about the reality of SHTF and everything like that. I've been to a lot of corners of the world, a lot of crappy parts, and a lot of people have electricity a lot of the time. That's not to say you're always going to have electricity, but this thought that one day just all of your electricity and water is going to turn off and it's never going to come back on ever again, it's a big maybe what if kind of sort of might happen type scenario. It's definitely a possibility. You should plan for that to happen in the short term, but as civilization always, steps back up and puts itself back together at some point in time. Nonetheless, what does your alternate power sources look like? What does your protection look like? Do you own a shotgun that's filled with, birdshot and a 40 cal handgun, and that's what you got for self-protection? Or are you a person that has a more well-rounded and diverse firearms collection? Have you received training on how to use all of those and how to effectively employ them? Do you have, any level of gear, or at least protection, personal protection, like vests, helmets, gas masks, whatever that might be? Your personal preparedness goes a long way, and you have to consider this not just for yourself, but your families as well, if family is a part of your life. I'm not saying that you need to go out and build up enough preps to sustain you, your wife, 3 kids, and your 6 cousins and their kids, but making sure you have preps for your immediate household is extremely important. But besides our personal preps, we look to community-based groups, whether that be some sort of MAG or preparedness group, whether that be like a Minuteman style group or, other civilian defense force style organizations. I think that is a big thing that we've seen change since 2020 to now. 2020 and before, kind of like armed civilian organizations were a thing, but it was more of like the 3%er style groups. It was big statewide or national-wide organizations that really didn't have any training requirements. You really weren't personally familiar with everybody to a certain extent. The seriousness of the civilian-based groups wasn't really there. But as time moved on from 2020, we have seen culture change like nothing you would have never thought about it before COVID. You would have never thought that this was where the direction that the 2A community and the preparedness community was going to go, where we now have a lot of community-based groups, whether they be prepper groups or they be community defense style groups where guys are expected to be riflemen. And now you have civilian organizations looking at how to establish higher levels of supply and logistics, command and control elements, a higher capability of communications. The things that these civilian-based groups behind the scenes are doing, I think is extremely important. And I think I'm really glad to see us take those steps as a culture. And it comes from social media to a certain extent. We have people like S2 Underground, who puts out phenomenal content. You have people like Isaac from TRX Arms He does their podcast, and he does a phenomenal job talking about the civilian defense force and the civilian defense industry, as well as, kind of different capabilities that come along with that kind of stuff besides firearms. We've been big advocates of it here for a really long time, and there are a ton of other great companies, influencers, podcasts, YouTube channels that talk about this kind of stuff. And it kind of started as, just your basic rifleman skills, small unit tactics, room clearing, that kind of stuff, around and after COVID. Then it turned into more formalized groups with standards and kind of starting to talk about jobs. Now we're in that phase where we're talking about comms. We're talking about logistics. We're talking about supply chains. We're talking about PR and community involvement and all of this kind of stuff. Which brings me to, where we are at now with that culture. But there's also a counterculture against that. I don't remember what the bill number is off the top of my head, but there is a bill in Congress right now that essentially would forbid any type of militia or paramilitary training in the United States of civilian-based groups. And this is not legal advice, but who cares? Who cares what they say? Most of us already don't care what they say. Let's be honest. Nor do I acknowledge their authority to tell me that I'm not allowed to train with the people in my own community on firearms marksmanship or, how to effectively set up a supply chain that can be used for a lot of other things other than conflict. A lot of these civilian-based groups have the mindset of, disaster relief and, mass casualty incidents and other stuff other than just conflict. So for someone locked away in DC behind wired gates and armed guards and all of that kind of crap to tell me I'm not allowed to do that, I just really don't care, guys. I really don't. And I think we as a culture and we as a people need to kind of stand together on that and say, you don't have the authority to do that. That is a power trip. You're trying to become, more so over the people than what is intended. And we've about had enough of all that. I mean, even now, since COVID, we have seen a really large part of the younger generation return to homesteading and gardening and canning and all that kind of stuff. And now, probably for the past 4 or 5 months, I've seen a ton of articles of these news companies and studies or whatever saying that, homesteading increases the carbon footprint by like 5 times the amount instead of you just buying food from the store. Like, really? Is the organic soil in a 5x10 box in my backyard filled with a few tomato plants really increasing global warming and the carbon footprint? Really? You want me to just go to the store and continue to feed the agricultural industrial complex of spraying all of our foods and moving foods on trucks and planes and trains and all of that? No, I'm good. I don't buy it. That's just silliness to believe. But we've seen a big change in culture as a whole. And I think through 2024, we're going to continue to see that culture change. I think more people are going to become comfortable with the fact of training with civilian-based groups and sticking together. A lot of people are worried about the feds coming in and taking you in the middle of the night because you went to a training with some local guys, or, you still have this pistol brace or whatever it is. But, the reality is that you can be picked off a lot easier when you're by yourself or when you're in really small numbers because you're afraid to expand. But if you change culture, if you change your community, if you interact with people, if you know your local officials, if you know the people in your community and you take these steps to change your own reality around you, you have a lot less to worry about when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I think that's how we make good change moving forward. But even outside all of that, these civilian-based groups kind of set the stage to pass this culture on to future generations. I think it's important that, local community groups get their families together and their kids, can play with each other and spouses know each other, and it promotes good culture. And I think that is the biggest takeaway from all of this, because we have to play the long game on all this. You're not going to shoot your way out of this woke cancer that we are stuck with in some, doomer fantasy wet dream. It's done slowly. It's done through changing minds. It's done through passing, a level of, how should I say this, lifestyle down to your kids and then on to their kids and so on and so forth. Hot chocolate break. And that's really what it all comes down to. I think 2024 is going to be a weird year. I think things are going to continue to escalate on all fronts. I think Ukraine is done in the Ukraine-Russian war. All Zelensky is doing is feeding Ukrainians into the meat grinder until the meat grinder runs out of meat. I think Russia is going to win this war. I think China, at some point in time, especially if Trump loses this election, and it's not me rooting for Trump in any way, it's just kind of facing the reality that Biden is not a strong president. China will be emboldened, will take Taiwan. North Korea and South Korea may go to war. The Iranian proxies and Iran and all the other Shiite militias all throughout the Middle East are going to continue to raise havoc. You're going to see culture wars in Europe between the newer, younger, conservative generation and these crazy liberal, woke-based groups. It's setting up to be a very interesting year, guys. But outside of that, for ECT, obviously we're going to continue to promote other companies and whatnot that are doing stuff for the civilian defense industry. I really like that term that Isaac has been using, the civilian defense industry. We're going to have Red Right Hand on here on our next podcast to talk about the medium support weapon that he's been developing. A lot of you guys may remember back at the end of summer, beginning of fall, we did a YouTube review over his Recce LMG, and then we kind of did a video over LSWs as a whole. We've talked about comms, and we've really kind of focused on portable comms, really, in 2023. This year, I want to talk more about kind of the larger organization comms, base stations, mobile stations, maybe some HF, maybe some Manpack stuff. I've been working on Manpack stuff for a little over a year, and guys, let me tell you, comms is probably one of the most difficult fields to tackle as far as civilian capabilities go, because the civilian market is not meant to provide tactical communications to the civilian base. It's just not. A lot of the there are some portables that are coming out now that are meant for the civilian market that have encryption and digital capabilities, but really a lot of this started by buying up surplus government radios like the XTSs, the EF Johnsons, the 5100s, the Kenwoods, all of that kind of stuff. So when it comes to the Manpack side, there are not very many VHF or UHF radios that are set up for Manpack capabilities that have digital modes or have encryption capabilities, at least not at a reasonable price stance. And that's how I look at a lot of things. I look at how reasonable is this? Not to say it's cheap, but how reasonable is this? Especially if you're looking to you want to build your capabilities and make multiples and duplicates of things. You can't be buying multiple $1,000 Manpack systems, and it's just not sustainable or realistic. So, we personally looked at the XTL 5000, the half-powered ones, the ones that push out 10 and 50 watts, and we ran into some issues mainly with the framing for it and the audio, but we fixed the audio issue. Now we're on the framing issue. It's a big, heavy radio that requires a very specific frame, and it requires an even bigger battery pack. Now we're looking at something else behind the scenes. I have a prototype. I'm looking at it on my shelf, actually, across the room. A prototype for an affordable civilian Manpack. I need to change out some cables and do a few cosmetic things, but I think you guys will get to see a peep at this here really soon. And it has multiple capabilities, which I'm actually kind of pleased with. I think the reality of the civilian comms market is we have to create a lot of things, a lot of options out of stuff that was not meant to do what we want it to do. But that's okay. That's the name of the game. That's how we be innovative. That's how we change the market. And maybe in the future, if there's a demand for something, a company will move forward to fulfill it. Similar to how a lot of these companies have. So we'll see where that goes. And then hopefully I get a lot of other good cultural people onto the podcast. I'd like to get some more leaders from some of these public civilian Defense Force and Minuteman groups on Instagram, get them on here and kind of talk about developing your community-based groups, talk about developing leaders and all of that kind of stuff, and hopefully drive more of you guys to start your own groups and become leaders. In this day and age, we really, really need leaders. And without them, we're kind of just wandering around waiting for someone to tell us what to do or what the culture change is next. And I think in order to get out of that requires leaders. It requires people to step up because it can be a very hard task. It requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of knowledge. It requires a lot of patience, to start your own, local organization. If you do it right, you do it professionally, there's a lot that goes into it, guys. There's a lot that goes into it. So that's really all I've got for kind of my outlook and initial thoughts on 2024. Like I said, next episode we'll have Cody from Red Right Hand on here, and then hopefully we have some more great guests. I would not expect from us to have a lot of any classes through the first half of 2024. Maybe a class or two on the back half of 2024. But like I said, I'm getting married later this year, and lots of busyness to come. So I'd like to say that we'll see a return of the medical classes and maybe some comms classes in 2025. I'll be the first to tell you I am not the most technically proficient comms person. I'm more of a practical application comms person. Things that people who are not comms people, I'm good at explaining and showing you why things do what they do at the standard user level. There are guys that are way smarter than me on the technical side of how comms works and the data behind all these different pieces of equipment and whatnot. But I think we may benefit from some more comms classes. Wyoming Survival and Matthew from Tactical Comms, they do communications classes. Definitely go give them a look on Instagram if that's something you're into. And guys, continue to just support all of these other YouTube channels and Instagram pages that are trying to push out content and try to grow this change of culture and grow these communities. A lot of people don't have businesses behind them or those types of platforms to support what they're doing. A lot of guys just do it because that's what they enjoy doing. They enjoy making content. They enjoy sharing information and experience and whatnot. So please continue to give them support. I'm sure at some point in time, social media is going to crack down hard on us this year since it's election year. I really hope we don't get hit again because 2021 really kicked our butt and set us back, almost a full year. And I hope we don't have to go through that again. But if we do, we will continue to crawl back just like we always do. But that's all I've got for episode 31, a look at 2024. As always, guys, train hard, train often.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.